My name's Alex Turner, and I'm pretty sure I'm going crazy. Or maybe the world is. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning, the kind of day where you'd rather stay in bed than drag yourself to school. I was running late, as usual. Mom was already at work, so I grabbed a Pop-Tart and headed out into the downpour. That's when I saw him for the first time. He was standing on the corner, just watching me. Tall guy wearing an old-fashioned suit that looked like it was from the 1920s or something. But here's the weird part. The rain wasn't touching him. It was like there was an invisible umbrella over his head. Every drop just went around him. I blinked, sure I was seeing things. When I looked again, he was gone. I shook it off and kept walking, pulling my hoodie tighter against the cold. But then I saw him again, this time across the street. He was just standing there, staring at me with these intense blue eyes. And I swear he smiled at me. Not a friendly smile, but the kind a wolf might give a rabbit right before it pounces. I started walking faster, my heart pounding. This was crazy, right? People don't just appear and disappear, and they definitely get wet in the rain. I made it to school, soaked to the bone, and more than a little freaked out. As I sat in my first class, trying to calm down, I noticed something on my arm. It looked like a symbol, kind of like a spiral with weird markings around it. I didn't remember drawing it, but maybe I'd doodled it, absent-mindedly. The day went on, and I started to relax. By lunch, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. That's when my best friend, Jess, sat down next to me. "Dude, what's with the guy who's been following you around?" she asked, munching on a fry. My blood ran cold. "What guy?" "The one in the old-timey suit. He's been standing outside every classroom you've been in. Creepy as hell." I looked out the cafeteria window, and there he was, standing in the rain. Still dry, still staring at me. I told Jess everything. She listened, her eyes getting wider and wider. When I finished, she grabbed my arm, the one with the symbol. "Alex," she said, her voice shaking, "I've seen this before. In my grandma's old books." Turns out, Jess's grandmother was some kind of occult expert. The symbol on my arm, it was a protection rune, and according to Jess, it was the only thing keeping me alive. See, the man in the rain wasn't a man at all. He was something called a rainwalker, a kind of demon that used rainstorms to hunt, and for some reason, he'd chosen me as his next victim. But here's where it gets really weird. As Jess was explaining all this, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Honey, please come straight home after school. We need to talk. It's about your father." My dad had disappeared when I was a baby. Mom never talked about him. And now, on the day a rain demon decided to stalk me, she suddenly wanted to discuss him. The rest of the day was a blur. I kept seeing the rainwalker everywhere, always watching, always waiting. When the final bell rang, I ran out of the school, Jess right behind me. The rest of the day was a blur. I kept seeing the rainwalker everywhere, always watching, always waiting. When the final bell rang, I ran out of the school, Jess right behind me. We were halfway down the street when a car pulled up beside us. The window rolled down and I saw my mom, and the man in the suit sitting next to her. "Alex," my mom said, her voice eerily calm, "it's time to come home. Your father's been waiting a long time to meet you." The man, the thing I thought was hunting me, smiled that wolf smile again. "Hello, son," he said. "Ready to learn about your heritage?" Turns out I wasn't the victim. I was the heir. My father was a rainwalker, and I was half demon. The symbol on my arm, it wasn't protecting me from him. It was awakening my dormant powers. As I stood there in the rain, feeling the drops start to move around me instead of hitting me, I realized my normal life was over. I was about to step into a world I never knew existed, full of demons and magic and who knows what else. I looked at Jess, whose grandmother's teachings were apparently just the tip of the iceberg. I looked at my mom, who'd been keeping this secret my whole life. And I looked at my father, a demon who could walk between raindrops. Well, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt, I guess I won't need an umbrella anymore. And with that, I stepped into the car, leaving my old life behind in the rain-soaked streets. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a story that would change not just my life, but the fate of two worlds. But that's a tale for another time. My name is Emma Collins, and I'm about to die. But let me start from the beginning. I was just your average 18-year-old girl in a small town called Maplewood. Boring place, really. Nothing ever happened here. That is, until Ethan arrived. Ethan was everything a girl could dream of. Tall, dark, and mysteriously handsome. He showed up at our high school one day, and suddenly, my world wasn't so boring anymore. When he first talked to me, I nearly fainted. His voice was like velvet, and his eyes, God, his eyes were so deep I felt like I could drown in them. Before I knew it, we were dating. Ethan was different from other guys. He only met me at night, saying he had a rare skin condition that made him sensitive to sunlight. He never ate around me, claiming he was on a special diet. And his skin was always so cold, I should have known something was off. But love makes you blind, right? It was on our 3-month anniversary that Ethan finally told me the truth. We were in the woods behind my house, the moon high above us. He looked at me with those hypnotic eyes and said, "Emma, there's something I need to tell you. I'm not human." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but then he showed me his fangs. A vampire. My boyfriend was a freaking vampire. I should have run, should have screamed, but instead I was excited. This was like every supernatural romance I'd ever read. I was special, chosen by this eternal, beautiful creature. Ethan told me he loved me, that he wanted to spend eternity with me. All I had to do was let him turn me. Just one bite, he said, and we could be together forever. I said yes. Of course I said yes. The bite hurt more than I expected, but as I felt my life draining away, I was happy. I was going to be like Ethan. We would be together forever. Except, that's not what happened. As I lay there, getting weaker and weaker, Ethan stood up. The love in his eyes was gone, replaced by cold satisfaction. "Thank you, Emma," he said, wiping my blood from his lips. "You've been most helpful." That's when I realized I wasn't special. I was food. But here's where the story takes a turn. As my vision started to fade, I saw something impossible. My best friend, Sarah, stepped out from behind a tree. But she wasn't alone. She was with a group of people, all armed with what looked like weird sci-fi weapons. "Step away from the girl, Ethan," Sarah said, her voice full of authority. "Or should I say, Subject 27, Ethan hissed, his handsome face contorting into something monstrous. "How did you find me?" Sarah smiled grimly. "We've been tracking you for months. Did you really think we'd let a lab-created vampire run loose?" Lab-created vampire? What the hell was going on? As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I caught bits and pieces of their conversation. Something about a secret government project, genetically engineered vampires, a plan gone wrong. Ethan wasn't a real vampire, he was an experiment that had escaped. The last thing I remember is Sarah kneeling beside me, pressing something to the bite on my neck. "Hang on, Emma," she said. "The antidote is working. You're going to be okay." I woke up 3 days later in a secret facility. Sarah explained everything. She wasn't just my best friend. She was an agent for a covert organization that dealt with supernatural threats. Ethan was one of several vampire subjects who had escaped from a lab. They'd been using him to lure me in, knowing he'd eventually lead them to the others. I'm so sorry we had to use you like this, Emma, Sarah said, but you've helped us save countless lives. So here I am. Not dead, but not quite the same either. The antidote saved me from becoming a vampire, but it changed me. I'm faster now, stronger. And sometimes when I'm angry, I can feel fangs pressing against my lips. Sarah says I have a choice. I can try to go back to my normal life, pretend none of this ever happened. Or I can join them, help fight the monsters that lurk in the shadows. I think we all know which option I'm going to choose. After all, normal is overrated, right? So yeah, that's my story. I fell for a vampire, almost died, and now I'm some kind of hybrid monster hunter. Just your typical teenage experience, I guess. But let me give you one piece of advice. If a mysteriously handsome new guy shows up in your town, run. Just run. My name is Lily Chen, and I'm losing my mind. At least, that's what everyone tells me. But I know the truth. The girl in the mirror. She's real, and she's trying to destroy me. It all started on my 16th birthday. Mom got me this antique mirror, said it was a family heirloom. It was beautiful, with an ornate silver frame and glass so clear it was like looking through a window. The first time I looked into it, everything seemed normal. But then, just for a second, I saw something change in my reflection. A flicker of something else. A cruel smile that wasn't mine, eyes that gleamed with malice. I blinked, and it was gone. Just my normal reflection staring back at me. I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me. But it kept happening. Every time I looked in the mirror, I'd catch glimpses of this other me. She looked exactly like me, but wrong. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too sharp. And she moved when I didn't, watching me from behind the glass. I tried to tell my parents, but they didn't believe me. They said I was just stressed about school, that I was imagining things. But I knew what I saw. Things got worse. I'd wake up with scratches on my arms, scratches that looked like they came from the inside. My room would be a mess, things broken and scattered, but I had no memory of doing it. And always, always that girl in the mirror was watching, smiling, waiting. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I covered every reflective surface in my room, but somehow I always found myself drawn back to that antique mirror. My parents were worried. They sent me to a therapist who diagnosed me with schizophrenia. They put me on medication, but it didn't help. Nothing could stop the girl in the mirror. One night I woke up to find myself standing in front of the mirror. The other me was there, grinning widely. And then she spoke. "It's time, Lily," she said, her voice a twisted version of my own. "Time to switch places." I screamed and smashed the mirror with my bare hands. The glass shattered, cutting my skin. But I didn't care. I just needed it to stop. They took me to the hospital after that. Suicide attempt, they said. Psychotic break. They didn't understand. I wasn't trying to hurt myself. I was trying to hurt her. But here's where things take a turn. As I sat in my hospital room, bandaged and sedated, a nurse came in. But it wasn't just any nurse. It was Mrs. Lynn, our elderly neighbor, who used to babysit me when I was little. "Oh, Lily," she said, her eyes full of sadness. "I was afraid this might happen." She sat down beside my bed and told me a story about the mirror, and about our family. Turns out the mirror was cursed. It had been in our family for generations, passed down from mother to daughter. Every other generation it would awaken, showing the darker side of whoever looked into it. "The girl you see," Mrs. Lynn explained, "she's not just a reflection. She's a part of you. The part of you that you keep hidden, even from yourself." The curse, she said, was a test, a way for us to confront our darker selves, to acknowledge and accept all parts of who we are. Those who couldn't face their darkness were consumed by it, driven mad by their own reflection. "But you, Lily," she said, squeezing my hand, "you fought. You refused to let the darkness win, and in doing so, you've broken the curse." I didn't believe her at first, but as the days passed, I realized the voice in my head was quiet. The girl in the mirror was gone. All I saw when I looked at my reflection was me. Just me, with all my flaws and strengths. So here I am, out of the hospital and trying to piece my life back together. It's not easy. People still whisper about me, the crazy girl who smashed a mirror. But I know the truth now. We all have darkness inside us. The trick is not to fear it, but to accept it as part of who we are. To integrate it, rather than let it consume us. I'm not crazy. I'm not weak. I'm a girl who faced her demons, quite literally, and came out stronger. But let me give you some advice. If you ever come across an antique mirror that gives you a bad feeling, don't look too closely. You might not like what you see looking back.